Hello, ghouls and gamers, and of course, my fellow rejects. Today, today's video is another psyker build video. Actually, after I made those other videos, my buddy Gamma here at the Swamp Mages, shout out Gamma, he informed me that this feat here, this where you get, especially the enemies killed by your Soul Blaze effects, have a 10% chance to grant you warp charges. Um, that the Pergatus staff, the fire staff, uh, deals Soul Blaze damage. So I went back and I've tested it some more with the Pergatus staff, and yes, that makes this feat abundantly more powerful. In fact, it makes the Pergatus staff abundantly more powerful because you are getting these Soul Blaze, you are getting these stacks like crazy when you're running around killing stuff with your Pergatus staff. So I wanted to go ahead and show you the build I use, and then give you a few more options um, that also work very well with this build. The number one thing is honestly Ascendant Blaze. With the Brigada staff, those two mesh so very well together. I would suggest those together from now on. But all of this other stuff is kind of personal preference. There's a lot of different a lot of different feats that work very well with this build. So I'm just going to first off show you the one I use, which is I use the Essence Harvest because I'm getting so many warp charges that I keep on uh, refreshing this, which this does not stack. It's not like that you're going to, like, if you get another warp charge within the 5 seconds. I didn't say that on my feat breakdown video, but if you get another warp charge within 5 seconds, it's not going to actually stack. It's not like it's going to give you 60% over the next 5 seconds, or 60% for the next 2 seconds, and then back to 30%. All it does is refresh this cooldown. So essentially, if you are 3 seconds in, you get another stack, it's just going to boost it back up to 5 seconds, which means you're always regenerating toughness, which I found very useful in this build because I generate a lot of warp charges on this build. So, um, the next one would be I use Psychic Wrath. I just like the extra bonus damage. Any of these work with this build. Inner Tranquility just lets you use your Fire Staff more often. It lets you not have to be purging your peril, quelling your peril as often. So it just gives you more time on your Fire Staff. And Rack and Ruin works very well because it gives you more Soul Blaze stacks on more enemies. If you're using your Brain Burst a lot, which you probably will be, honestly, with this, because with the Brigada staff, you don't have another ranged option. So this works very well as well. I just personally prefer the Psychonex Wrath. I like that extra damage. Um, I like Psychic Communion. That's the one I use just because it helps me even more. Just constantly get these warp stacks. I think that this is the best in slot, but it does. But Psychonex Aura is pretty good too. It helps you get cooldown on your Psychonex Wrath to be able to put more Soul Blade stacks out more often. I did play with it. It does work out very well. Um, I don't personally like Cerebral Lacerations. I think one of these two is your go-to. I personally think Psychic Communion is the best. The third tree is another one. This has nothing to do with this build whatsoever. This is all personal preference. So if you prefer your blocks to give you peril instead of stamina damage, go for it. If you like to be able to move full speed while you're quelling peril, go for it. And me personally, I'm just a huge fan of Kinetic Shield. Um, so a buddy of mine pointed out that if you have, which is Derpentine69, check him out. If you have deflection on your force sword, then he doesn't use this very much because he usually blocks most of his ranged attacks. But me personally, I like the Kinetic Shield. Warp Battery is what I use because I get so many stacks on this. I like having 6 stacks instead of 4. Very good. But I honestly love every single one of these with this build. I've used all of them. Kinetic Overload works great because you're getting so many stacks that you usually end up getting extra stacks, and then another enemy nearby gets more soul blaze, which can give you more stacks, which can give you more soul, which gives more things soul blaze. So it's kind of like an endless burn. It's it's awesome. I personally prefer having the 6 charges for my when I do use my blast. I get put out even more soul blaze, but this one works great too. And then kinetic flare works super great too, especially if you're pairing it with rack and ruin. Just I mean, you don't always hit an elite with it with the kinetic flare, but when you do, then that'll make rack and ruin go off, give more soul blaze to more things around it. It's just a great. I do wish that this would prioritize elites, but the fact that it doesn't isn't the end of the world. It's still a very good feat, and it gives you more warp charges. So if you're having a hard time staying at 6, then you would honestly probably have a hard time getting kinetic overload as well. So if you're having a hard time staying at getting these extra warp charges, then go with kinetic flare. But honestly, using the Purgata staff with Ascendant Blaze and having Psychic Communion, I never have a problem with my warp stacks at all. Especially you throw in a couple brain burst, and it's just fantastic. So very very strong build. Still not the one I use most frequently because I'm not the biggest fan of the Purgata staff, but it is a very strong build. So I wanted to go ahead and put this out here for the viewers. So yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in, and as always, stay swampy.